Well, on their very first date, he picked up a corpse, no lie. But that didn't stop our next guest from marrying him. Take a look.
For 25 years, Dee Oliver worked alongside her husband, Johnny, a fourth-generation funeral director. Together, they helped countless families plan for the inevitable. When Johnny passed away suddenly in 2007, Dee was devastated. Although she and Johnny worked with grieving families every day, Dee found herself unprepared. In her book, The Undertaker's Wife, Dee talks about how to plan for and survive the loss of a loved one.
Well, please welcome to the 700 Club, Dee Oliver. Dee, great to see you.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, not everybody marries a funeral director. Tell us what happened on your very first date.
Well, I had met him on a blind date, and then we decided we were going to have a real date, and he picked me up, and I'd only seen him in the funeral suit, that pinstripe black suit that he wore all the time.
Right.
And he shows up in this navy blue blazer, khaki pants, so handsome, and off we go. He's got dinner reservations, and he says to me, he goes, you know, I'm on call tonight. And I said,
You knew
right.
he was a funeral director.
I knew he was a funeral director.
But what does on call mean
but
exactly?
I didn't, exactly. I had no clue what on call was. And I said, that's no problem. And he says, it shouldn't present a problem. He said, I'm covered. And about that time, his beeper went off, and he said, I need to stop and make a phone call. And he comes back, he says, look, I got to take this call. Do you mind coming along? I don't want to end the date. And I said, sure. Still had no clue what all this meant. And the next thing I know, we're at the funeral home. He looks at me and he says, I'll be right back. And I'm sitting in this black sports car, and I'm thinking, fine. And he comes back out of the funeral home, opens my car door. Out I get. He's in his, it's like Superman, right? Except that he's changed into the funeral suit, escorts me into this black station wagon, which I later find out is a removal wagon.
Oh, dear.
And off we go into the night.
And there's something in the back seat.
There's nothing in the back seat at this point.
Okay.
We arrive at a residence, and he says, I'll be right back. And I noticed when we pulled up, there are two men dressed just like him. And I'm sitting in the car waiting, and the next thing I know, it's like this big boom, 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 like somebody had hit the back of the car.
No.
And I realized they have opened it up, and I turn and I look, and there's a cot with a sheet over it right next to me, and I'm...
Oh, it's not even in a casket.
No, because...
And this is your first date.
This is our first
and you
date.
married
We're
him.
supposed to go to steak and ale. Exactly. And
Well,
he, you know, and so off we went back to the funeral home.
This is true love indeed.
Exactly.
Well, you worked alongside your husband, Johnny, for 25 years in the funeral home. But something devastated you in 2007. What happened?
I had gone away on a girls' weekend and had come back, and we were in bed that night, and the next thing I knew, he had woken me up and said, I have this terrible headache. And when I rolled him over, I realized that we didn't just have a headache. He was having a severe aneurysm, had blown in his head.
He was only in his early 60s?
He was 61 years old at the time. Wow. And called 911 and got his cell phone number, called the first name on his cell phone ID list, and the next thing I know...
He was healthy, so this was...
He was perfectly healthy.
The last thing you were expecting.
He was young, he was strong, never saw this coming. It was completely out of the blue, and the next thing I knew, we were in ICU and trying to get him to Norfolk and then up to Charlottesville, and the aneurysm just kept bleeding out, and on 2 days later, I took him off of life support. I had to make that decision.
Oh, you know, it's so hard to believe that your husband worked as a funeral director, but had not really prepared for his own death at all. Why not?
I think it's one of those things that, you know, we talk about it and we work in it, and we do it every single day.
Yeah.
We obviously knew what funeral home we were going to use, but we hadn't gone around to doing the details in our lives. And I think that we just, as humans, we always think we'll do that tomorrow. We put it off. And that was one of the things we shouldn't have done.
Now, you had 3 young daughters at the time, and still have 3 daughters. How did you and your daughters cope? How did your faith in God help you through this time?
God was just so great to us. And I know that one of my favorite verses is, you know, I have a plan for you, you know.
Jeremiah 29:11.
Exactly. And I stood on that, and I stood on the fact that he takes care of the widows and the orphans. And
you said that you really started having, after your husband's death, you really started having a relationship with God like never before.
Oh, I just realized that the bottom had fallen out of my world. I mean, not only had Johnny had passed away, but my mother passed away suddenly 3 months later, and I had my father and 3 girls, and I said, I don't have a support system anymore, and I need to go to the top.
God really became that for you. You said, you know, every morning it was your coffee, your Bible, and God, and you didn't miss that meeting.
I didn't miss it. I knew he was waiting for me, and I might be a little late, but we showed up and, you know.
Now, there's so many things we need to get to, because you say we need to be prepared for death. It is a part of life. One of the things, we need to write our own obituary. That seems kind of,
I know,
hard.
You know, and nobody wants to do that. And I think it's because everybody thinks that if they write an obituary, they're going to die. And I'm telling you, of all the death certificates I've seen, I've never seen a cause of death listed as they wrote an obituary.
Right. Sure.
And so I think that it's really important that people do that, because you don't remember all the things that somebody accomplishes in their life. When I had to write Johnny's, I left things out to this day that still upsets me, because it's such a stressful time to try to do that.
Yes.
And so it's easier if the person writes about themselves.
That is very interesting. Well, you also say that you should write a love letter to your loved one, seal it, put it in a place where you know it will be found. And what should be in that letter?
Things like passcodes, list of bank accounts, information about safety deposit boxes, where the key is to
not
the
your
safety
traditional
deposit.
love letter.
No, no. As much as you would like to have that, and I wish Johnny had written me a love letter.
So maybe that as well,
which would be nice to have.
That. But then this is a love letter in the sense of, these are things I want my loved one to know exactly where to find these things during this very stressful time.
Yes.
You know, bank accounts and all that thing, all those kind of things. What about now? You actually went back to school, got your mortuary license. Are you still working in the funeral biz?
Not at the present time. I wish I was, but I'm not at this point. No, but I did. I went back to mortuary school and got my funeral director's license and my embalming license.
Well, your book, The Undertaker's Wife, I mean, people might think, oh, I don't want to read this sounds morbid. It's actually very funny, and it grips you right at the very beginning. It's amazing, isn't it, how God can take our worst pain and actually we can find some humor in it, because you know, that's how good God is. And so I really want to recommend your book, The Undertaker's Wife. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Dee. God bless you.
It was such a great time being here with you.